this one. Cool, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for joining me. As I said before, you're speaking to Quinn Kennedy. I'm going to be presenting this for you today. If you need my details, please check on screen. So there's my full name, Quinn Kennedy, my email address, quinn@micrographics or mgfx.co.za. Application engineer, yes, part-time trying to take over the world. Yes, my normal spiel if you've been with one of my webinars before. So without further ado, let's get on cracking with this. So in our agenda today, we're going to be looking at just a bit of our intro, which we're busy going through, issues of linked objects, how to send them without breaking your drawing, embedding the images, vectorizing images, and a few useful tricks, but more of my notes that I've come across or things I've found out, and then our outro. Okay, so firstly, I don't like death by PowerPoint, but there may be a little thing or two that crops up and that I'll just have to quickly fix, so please bear with me. Hence the reason, no death by PowerPoint, but here to be dragons. Also, I've got Hardy-Daws sitting outside my window all the time as they're nesting, so please forgive them if they decide to make their presence known. Okay, that being said, first and foremost on the list of our agenda is issues with linked objects. Now, if you've ever worked on a nice drawing and you've made this pretty border, it's got all this embedded information, or shouldn't say embedded, should I say linked information? And you'll see this a lot in even large companies where they're, for instance, very, very often, the image of either their clients or their own logos are displayed on the border. Now, normally what will happen is they think, okay, cool, I'm going to just take an image, drag it and drop it into my drawing, or otherwise, if they're being fancy, they can use the insert option. And this would normally then create a reference. If you've used Xrefs before, you'll probably know what I mean. And you can see then on my on the image over here what it's actually portraying. It is showing us a link. Now, this is generally we'll see is that internally the drawing may look pretty much okay, but once you send it out to somebody else, they see this, and your beautiful and your border that you've spent so much time and effort working on, trying to make it look okay and great, send it out to somebody, and then it's just a mess. All they see is just file paths everywhere. This is done because you've sent something out, but it doesn't have that backing information. So how do we get around this? Well, this is what this whole webinar is about, to try and assist you with this. And I've got multiple different ways to try and get us around these issues. So first and foremost, if you do want to send something out to people and make sure that it is going to be displayed as you intend it to be, I recommend using the Etransmit functionality. Now, this is kind of a hidden thing. Well, not even really hidden. It's just a thing that's been in AutoCAD for quite a while that people don't utilize for some reason. Now, what Etransmit does, let me quickly jump to my AutoCAD. If I can find my AutoCAD here. I've got way too many things open right now. There we go. There's my AutoCAD. So basically, if I wanted to send this drawing out now to somebody to try and assist them, or give them information or drawings for whichever case it could be, I could send this, but because I've got a reference, that picture, it would break and you would get that same file path error. But now to send it, if I go to my application icon, application menu, and then under publish, we have got Etransmit. And if you read here, it actually tells you everything right there. Create a package of drawing files and their dependencies. Well, sorry, drawing files and their dependencies. So when I select it, I can then see everything that is included inside this transmittal. And as you can see, create transmittal. So if anything is linked here. So by the way, this doesn't just include pictures. As you can see, there's my PNG file, picture file. And if I click on it, I even get a bit of a preview. But this could also, if you go into file table, you can see the individual files. This could also be any maybe textiles that your company has developed. So any fonts, anything unique about that drawing, anything that's been linked to this drawing. This will also show any other drawing XREFs, etc., that's been linked in here. So this thing alone, to be able to create a package of everything that is linked in and embedded or created about this drawing, as soon as you do this, what I'm about to show you now, it will then dump it into a folder. And then as soon as they open up the main drawing, everything will just work correctly, or it should work correctly, depending on, of course, certain situations of the drawing itself. But that would be if the drawing itself is broken. I'm not going down that path right now. We're more interested in making sure that we can send our drawing correctly. In all honesty, though, I've never really seen it create issues. This being said, so now that you can see my PNG file and everything is there, I can now send this out. If I just click OK, this will just be the default way of setting it up. But this could also create a slight trap for you. So what we want to do here is go to our transmittal setup first. And in here, we've got the standard transmittal setup. You could go new or modify. I prefer to make new, as I don't like modifying the current stuff or what the only basically the safe one that is already there. So you can go new. I'm just going to call it MGFX out based on standard. Cool. Now it's popped up with the transmittal setup. Now this is the important part, and the most important part here I find is the package type. Is it going to be a zip? So when it sends it out, is it going to just immediately zip it for us? Or is it going to be a set of folders? And the reason why I point this out is certain antivirus and certain email does not allow you to send zip files straight. It's actually, it kills it sometimes, or it flags it, or it creates issues. So I kind of get around this by putting it into a set of files, basically a folder with a set of files, and then chucking it through another compression system, such as 7-zip or one of those others. It's up to you, or WinRAR, however you want to do it. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to leave it as a zip. If you put it as a set of folders, in fact, no, let me just rather put it as a set of folders so I can show you what I'm talking about. File format. So this will just tell you, so what you could do here is if you did not know what format this shall be received in, you can actually set it to automatically backsave for you. So you know then that if the guy who's ever, or girl, lady, is opening up on the other side, they will be able to know that you, with relative confidence, that they'll be able to open us up with a older version of AutoCAD. The rest of these, of course, you would want to know as to where it's setting the folder, and then your pathing options. So what this will do basically is how's it going to organize the data in here? I'm not going to go too deep into it as it's relatively straightforward if you read the options. The main things over here, I normally actually tick this purge drawing, because what it will do is it will reduce the file size, obviously, and then if you don't have anything in it that you're too worried about losing, chuck it in there. You can also tell it to bind the external references, so that way you won't end up with multiple different files being sent with it. But because this is an Etransmit, we don't normally do this because that would be kind of a bit pointless. You would have already probably bound it if you knew of that option, or if you wanted to use that option. Main things over here, I normally just leave these as default, such as you can also include the fonts if you did have a specific font in there, or otherwise, well, you could go through these and check. And then also give it the description of the specific setup if you want to. So everything, so it brings everything with us. Go okay. As you can see, my standard doesn't have anything, but there is my description on the screen. Going to close here. And as you can see now that I remember, I'm just going to quickly show you why it's showing us more stuff. I clicked include extra fonts, close. So now what it's done is it's grabbed our font map and everything with it. And if you expand it, you can actually see everything now that's in here. Now that that's done, I can click OK. Do I want to replace? I basically to put this in my place where I was testing last time. Let me just click browse. I'm going to create a new one inside there and call it temp, just so we don't end up with any issues. So C drive, MGFX, temp. Okay, close and go okay. Now it's nicely opened this for us, so we can go into C drive, MGFX, temp, and now this has chucked us into a nice folder. So if I were to open this drawing on somebody else's computer, no matter where it is, it will open up without any problems. Now, this is what I was talking about with being able to send this and make sure that it comes across in a predictable fashion. Now, with 7-zip, I can just right-click, and as you can see, I've got a whole whack of stuff and tools installed. But with 7-zip, I can just hover over it and say, add to 7-zip. If it was WinZip, you'd have the exact same options. It would probably just be a WinZip thing. Or otherwise, however you want to compress this. So 7-zip, add to that. And the cool thing is now I have got a relatively small file size. If I were to check the original one, it was 1.2 meg. Here it's cut it down to just under half the size. That's 600 kilobytes. And then I can send that off. So whoever grabs or receives this folder inside, they'll have everything they require to open up this drawing as intended, or as you're intended in that view. So that was basically how we would end up with this e-transmittal. And now when you send this off, you can be pretty much guaranteed that they'll get what you're expecting. That was Etransmit. I highly encourage you guys to take a look at it and test it. Even if it's not for you, even if you're not too sure, at least understand what it is, how it functions, and that way if you need to receive it at any point, you can tell the other person as to how it works. Moving swiftly along, our next option we've got is OLE, Object Linking Embedded, if I remember correctly, the what that thing stands for. So, which is a bit of a strange thing if you consider what it's actually doing. So what this is doing in a nutshell, before I go on a rant, is we're going to take an object. Now, you may have actually seen this, come across this without even realizing it. If you've ever copy-pasted cells directly into AutoCAD, you may notice that when you copy-paste the cells in, you get this OLE thing. And it looks like you've kind of done like a screenshot and pasted it into your AutoCAD. That's not exactly what you want, and then you realize, oh, maybe we should use. Oh, sorry, Avi. Yes, I will do so for you. Just let me carry on, and I'll take also some questions at the end there. Okay, carrying on with this. So what this will do, and by the way, sorry, yes, it will be available on YouTube afterwards. I'm getting mixed up here now. Okay, that being said, moving swiftly along, with these OLE images, what this is going to do and how to actually get this in can be a bit tricky, because what most people do with the images, they go, oh, right, 100%, I'm going to take this image, whatever it is that we've got, and I'm going to drag it directly into AutoCAD, or I'm going to use my import function and import it into AutoCAD. Now, let's actually try this now quickly. So I'm going to jump to my AutoCAD, oops, which I keep missing. There we go. So if I do go and I go attach, and then I try and attach, oops, not that one, see, MGFX, and I do try and attach this in, you notice it's attaching as a XREF, which obviously, if you've used attach before, you probably are aware of that. By the way, just a bit of an interesting information, if you do attach a PNG image directly, you may have noticed that it makes it, the background is black because it's got an alpha channel to it. That alpha channel basically being the invisible part to it. You'll notice this bottom one, you can see through the background. In fact, if I were to move this over something else, you can see in the background of it. And that's actually easily toggled on by if you select the object and you use background transparency. So that was attached. But what happens if you just drag and drop it? Well, if we do that, There we go. So if we do this drag and drop, you probably have also noticed that it still creates an XREF. So I've just got this XREF in multiple times now. So how do we actually then create this OLE image? My apologies. I'm really battling with that word today, it seems. So how do we do this? It's actually very simple once you know how, of course, like most things. So what you can do is you can edit this picture in any picture editor or open it up. So you can right click and you can say open with paint. So edit. Almost missed my edit. You can edit with paint. The problem is sometimes if you edit you don't want to edit with paint. So what we also use is we use Sketchbook, which is also pretty much the same. You've noticed I've already actually got it loaded up. So you would just open this normally or just drag it in. It depends on every way you want to go. Whichever method you use doesn't actually matter. You just need to open it up here because we're not actually going to be editing it all there. What we are going to do though is we're going to use either Control A, or we're going to do a drag selection around the object. It doesn't want to drag it now because it's paint. It's giving me issues. I'm just going to use Control A. Then you're going to either right click and go copy or Control C to copy. Go to your AutoCAD and use Control V and paste. It may ask you these funny little queries, but this is it's basically asking for the font sizes, etc. The main thing I just wanted to show you here is a few little things. So firstly, if I go into this object and we look at the external references, you see I don't have anything different. But if I hover over my properties now, or otherwise if you're wondering where the properties is, if you click on it and you right click and then go into your properties, you'll notice the OLE option is here. And we've got a few things in here we can also change. By the way, that's just for the displays. But the most important thing here is you notice it is now embedded. Now, I'll explain this a bit more in a second, but just remember embedded. And also remember it is an image that we're embedding into the drawing. So although this now will display as you want, it may create some funky things that you see in it. There are also ways or things you can toggle, such as the OLE, the frames. The best way how to see what options there are available is if you actually type OLE, and then you can actually see all the information. So this OLE frame will be this frame that you see around there. So we take a look. It's on 1. Set it to unlock 0. That one's still being displayed on that one. Basically, what we want to do is we want to toggle it until we either see it or basically is it going to be seen, is it going to be plottable, that type of stuff. And that's the main thing that people get upset about with the OLE linked images. Just be aware that when you're playing around with those, it can create some weird artifacts. So what'll happen is when you're looking at it, it's fine on your drawing sheet, but when you try and print it, the OLE object seems to move around. So it can take a bit of poking at it to try and get it to the correct position. So you might need to actually almost offset it. So in other words, move the object down, etc., or wherever you need to move it. That being said, it does have a few problems, but it can also help you. And I'll explain about the problems when we get to the tips and tricks side of it more than anything. This is more to show you as to how to get the image into it. And that will solve the problem about linking in instead. There is another one, and this works generally best if you've got a more simple type drawing or more simple image. As you can see over here, I've got it on my sketchbook, Control C, pasted it in. There is another option that we've got, and that is for vectorizing the image itself. Now, this can be a bit of a tricky one, and it can take you a while to do. Now, by doing this, it actually is more efficient in a way, but it is, like I said, a lot more tricky. Now, what do we mean by vectorizing? Well, pictures as we know it and that we work with is in a raster format. And if you've used AutoCAD for a while, you may be aware of this, the thing about rastering and vectoring. So in AutoCAD or most other drawing packages, we draw in a vector format. So it's basically a mathematical representation, or everything is done via math. It understands where it is. Very, very basic explanation of it. I know if you deeper into it than I am, then I salute you. But to try and explain this to sometimes just people think of it like that. Now, the cool thing about a vector is that you can scale it up and down very easily, and you won't lose any clarity or anything of the information. If we look actually, if we were to take an image, as you probably have seen, and you try and stretch it bigger or smaller, you'll notice it pixelates. You'd probably have noticed this a lot if you've ever sat down in Paint and you try and like stretch a image out or shrink it down. It pixelates. Basically, it breaks apart. It doesn't look nice because a pixel is a fixed amount of data. So you've got one pixel that's red, one pixel that's blue, very simplified term. Now, the problem is with this is that if you try and stretch it bigger or smaller, it doesn't know what to do with that. So all it does is says, okay, I've got one pixel that's blue. Now, if I try and make it bigger, okay, maybe I have to make it now 4 pixels instead. So you're making the thing physically bigger, but you're not increasing what we call the resolution of the picture. So that's the reason why you lose this data and it looks funny. And same thing for when you're making it smaller. If you've got one red pixel to try and make it smaller, it can't see anything smaller than that. Now, would be a normal picture like what you would take with a camera or a screenshot on the screen, etc. So it is a raster format. Very easily identifiable. Like I said, if you quickly try and stretch an image bigger or smaller, you'll see it distorts. It doesn't look correct. Where a vector, we can actually then physically see this. We can make it as big as we want or as small as we want, and we won't lose data. We won't lose the visual thing. Vector is also pretty cool because it means that it's also smaller because it's just a mathematical representation. Generally, they're also faster. Now, here comes the crux of the matter. Why don't we then use it more often? Firstly, they're more difficult sometimes to draw with and deal with. So in other words, instead of just quickly drawing a nice quick thing as to what you see and what you're getting, you have to be a little bit more careful. And using AutoCAD, etc., and that you probably are more than aware that to get things to align correctly, it can be a bit finicky sometimes, depending on a few things. But to try and get these nice little curves, etc., like what you can see in our logo here, it can take a bit of doing. It can take a while. Whereas if this is just a raster, it's just text that we can put down. We can also do the same thing in Vector, but you're kind of getting my point. There's also one other problem is that, you lose something. If you're trying to use vectorization, you lose something what's called granularity. So if you take a look at a picture, you'll see normally it's got a nice smoothing. So if we take a look at this background over here, you can see that the color transitions quite nicely throughout it, and it's got a lot of little detail inside it. It's very difficult, or it's a lot more time consuming to achieve this in vectorization. So hence the reason why we want to choose one or the other. Now, going back to what I'm going about, now the reason why I've explained all this in the background was to try and give you a bit of a prep as to why we are doing this and why it can be a bit difficult. So with this, now when you're doing this, try choose something as basic as possible or as few colors as possible. And that's one of my first tips with this. Make sure you've got a good image that you're working with, especially for things like logos and stuff. Try and get as a high resolution and sharp as possible. And that is going to make this a lot easier for you. So for this demonstration, I'm going to be using Inkscape. You can also use something like Illustrator. And actually, if I recommend, if you do have access to Illustrator, use Illustrator. It's far faster and far easier. But I'm using Inkscape in this case as it's the free option. Most people can quickly download and get it. It's like 60 meg or something off the net, which is very small in this day and age. So using Inkscape, I don't think I've got Inkscape open. So what I'm going to do is just go into our Inkscape program. Wait a little bit for it to load. Nice. Now my Inkscape program is nicely loaded. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the picture. I'm just going to drag and drop it into place, accept the default information, and that's it. Cool. So now what do we do from here? From here, what we're going to do is we're going to click the path option, I'm going to be giving you guys a crash course and helping you get into this path. Trace the bitmap. Now, here's where things go from being like kind of a science to being a bit more of a art form, I'm afraid. So, and just pro tip, by the way, make sure you've actually got the image selected first, or else this can give you a bit of issues. So for here, I'm just going to select single scan on this case. So it's going to scan through the image and then try and adjust it. I'm going to click update. So what it's now done is it's taking a look at the brightness cutoff. So it's seeing as to the light and darker areas and then collapsing it. Unfortunately, this is a bitonal process. So what it's going to do is going to collapse it into basically, is it dark? Is it light? And it's going to spit you out this over here. If you want to, you can even invert it. Don't forget to click update, and then it gives you that kind of inverted background. Now, with using these little things, you can get drastically different outcomes. And you can then play around with this, and you'll notice that the most subtle changes can give you a drastically different outcome. I normally find this brightness cutoff works the best, and I well, in this case, I found cranking it up to 5, update, and then smooth corners 1, optimization 2. That'll give me a fairly decent image. Of course, the more that you play around with this, the more you fine tune it, the better your outcome is going to be. But it may take you a while to do it. But at the end of this, you're left with a vectorized system. So when I click OK, looks like it's still the same. But if I drag this away, you can actually see I've now got a vectored impression. So this is not the cleanest of ones. As you can see, there's still a lot of artifacts. If I click on this, double click in there, sorry, I can then see my nodes, and I can actually adjust my nodes a little bit, and then maybe fix it up a little bit. Like I said, the more time you put into this, the better it's going to get. Just going to get rid of my original object. Select these. Just make sure everything's there. I'm going to go to File, Save As. And this is one of the reasons why I recommended Inkscape. It's because Inkscape has got the ability then to save it as a DXF file directly. A lot of the other programs, you'd have to save it as maybe an SVG or something, and then you have to jump through a few hoops. Here, I'm going to save it directly as a DXF. Now, when I save it as a DXF file, it's basically going to write into it and then say, okay, cool, you're saving it there. In fact, let me just close this one. And I'm going to select it and say save. It's going to ask you, how does it want to build this DXF file? So you can play around with these settings if you want. It's up to you. If you wanted to play around more with this customization or making it look pretty, please go ahead. I find that this current setup, the default setup, generally works the best. When I go OK, it's going to ask me to replace, because I already did it for demonstration. I can go back into my, oops, sorry, I just launched plant instead of clicking my normal AutoCAD. I can go into my AutoCAD now, find the DXF, and then open it. And you notice that it brings it into our AutoCAD, and then we can work with this. This is pretty cool because now what we can do is we can do things like our hatching. I can say solid, select my color, and then work throughout it. What this now means is that I've now got a vector that I can stretch, I can scale around, I can move it as we require and change it as we require. Now, once I'm finished with this and I can put it on my border, I know that wherever this goes, it's going to follow the drawing, of course. It's going to be more robust than anything else. It's also going to be more lightweight. Now, this way of vectorizing can be a godsend, but just be aware that it is going to take you time in order to get this correct. It's going to take time to get it right. It's going to take time to work with it. But once you have got it right, you can do something like what I've currently got on the screen here. This was done with the combination of both AutoCAD and Inventor. So what I did is I extracted this, and then I made sure it was fine, and then I actually pushed it into Inventor. And as you can see, you can get some pretty interesting results. This wasn't done with any other rendering application, by the way. And those of you that may be familiar with Inventor knows that it's not got the best or easiest to use, should I say is a better word, rendering engine built into it. So getting something like this out of it and getting this type of functionality with what you've already actually got at your disposal, that's an option what you can use. So just closing off, some of our useful tricks here and something that's going to really help you in future. Firstly, teach other people how to use the system as well. What it's going to do is it's going to make your lives easier in the end, because a lot of people they don't use it because they don't understand it, they don't know about it, especially things like I'm going to bring up next, the OLE objects, or just exporting via a Etransmit. People just send out their stuff without realizing that what they're sending out is breaking, or when they do realize it's breaking, they don't know why it is breaking or how to fix it. In this case, if we use this, if we teach other people this, we're going to all benefit from it then. Next thing is be careful when using early objects, as this will increase the file size. Think of it this way. If you embed anything into a drawing, the data has to be stored somehow. So in the back of each and every single AutoCAD drawing, there's a little database inside there. That little database basically keeps everything, including those embedded objects. If you go and you take a drawing that's maybe a meg in size, and you add in a picture that is also 1 meg in size, you have now effectively doubled the size of that drawing by putting this embedded object. Be very careful when doing this, because obviously the more you embed into it, the bigger that file is going to grow, and it's going to just balloon up drastically. Obviously, we cannot get away from this sometimes, but if you are dealing with really large drawings, and I mean maybe even survey size drawings, which they are several gigs in size, consider rather using an Etransmit than embedding. That's the reason why we don't normally do that. So this ELE object can kind of bite you sometimes, especially with this next issue that I've seen before. This is a very, very rare issue. I've only seen it a handful of times. I've been with Autodesk, by the way, since 2014, and I've only seen this about 2 or 3 times max. And one of them was actually not even AutoCAD, it was an Inventor. And there's the hottie I was speaking about. So going back to the OLE object, is this rare thing is basically if you embed any OLE objects inside a drawing. I've seen it when you export it to a DXF, it balloons the file size. And you'll see what I mean is by many-fold. So it's not just a case of it makes it a little bigger. I've seen a 200 kilobyte file go up to 200 megabytes in size. So just be aware that I have seen this error. And if you do see a DXF all of a sudden massively increase in size, check if it's not an OLE object in there. And you'll probably find if you delete that off, all of a sudden the draw, and you purge it, of course, all of a sudden your drawing is small again. So this is a rare issue that I have noticed, that I highlight it because it is an issue that I've noticed, and I wouldn't feel comfortable in telling you do this, and then it creates problems with your drawing. That being said, second to last of here is when converting raster to vector, try and use a high quality image as possible. I've mentioned this before. I'm mentioning it now again because really by doing this, you are going to save yourself a huge headache here, because by working with a good image, firstly, you're not going to be worrying about those okay, so to explain what I mean by high quality there is that you want nice sharp edges. And if you don't have those nice sharp edges, they're like looking a bit fuzzy. So the resolution is not that great. The scale of the image is already being played around with, and you can see it's slightly pixelated in that. That image processing that is going to happen when we do this, you'll notice it will be unable as to easily determine as to what to do with these corners. It doesn't understand this very easily, and you'll end up with sub-quality exports. And it'll take you a lot more to clean up. So that is the reason why I'm harping on and saying, make sure that you get a higher as high quality as possible, because it's going to be easier to convert. And lastly on my list here is, although Inkscape does work, I have found Adobe Illustrator's vectorization far easier and far faster to use. So if you've got it, use it. The process is very much the same, and the terminology is very much the same. So what we're doing is we're using that masking to grab it and then using the conversion to put it across. I have actually written a blog, by the way, on that. If you go check out our blogs on our website, you'll see I have actually put a whole thing there with using Illustrator. The main reason why I'm using the Inkscape here is because, as I said, it is an open system. So, as I've noted here at the bottom, you do get what you pay for, I'm afraid. The one is a free version, the other one is an open version. That being said, I've now shown you guys throughout this webinar. It has run a lot faster than I actually thought it would. But as I've shown you here, we have now shown you the issues of linking options and embedding options. What is the problems between them? And what is the best things, what you can take away from it? Early objects, really good to use. Just watch out, because they can create unpredictable things. They can jump around, especially when plotting them, etc. Embedding or taking a raster to a vector can really cut down on the file type. Well, the size of it can make it faster, but you won't maybe sometimes get as good quality in some cases because of that granularity effect, and it can be difficult to get those settings just right, just fine-tuned enough that makes it look good. So with that being said, are there any questions that I could maybe answer for you? If you've got them, please put them in the chat box now, and I'm more than willing to discuss anything you've got. Like I said, Avi, to your question, yes, this will be posted on YouTube, which I'm going to do as soon as this is finished. I'm going to basically put everything together, make it nice and pretty, and then publish it to our YouTube channel, which if you look up Micrographics, it will be on one of the sub-channels. Otherwise, do we have any other questions? I see Nigel is clicking. If you are wondering, by the way, about the where to find the chat, you can get the chat if you give me 1 second. Aha, quick way of doing this. Just go to your team viewer setting and you'll got the little chat thing there. Click there, or otherwise, if you've already got the chat visible at the bottom, you can click there and then you can post something into the chat. By the way, if you're interested, that tool that I'm using, Sherix, really nice for taking quick screenshots of things. I use it quite often. I've actually used it in the presentation as I've built my system up here. Okay, I'll give you guys a minute to think. Thank you, Nigel, and always a pleasure. Guys, if you do have any more queries or anything as well, please give me a shout, drop me a mail. I'm here at actually the Durban office here. We do also have engineers from across the country more than happy to assist you. Cool. That's great. Thanks. So like I said, if you guys do also have any queries, don't hesitate. Also drop us a shout at one of our other branches. Always happy to help you guys. Yeah, like I said, I'm in Durban. Please take my email address. Give me a shout if you need. Yeah, and otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day. Always a pleasure, Abby. Thank you. You too. Have a wonderful Monday. May the rest of the week go smoothly for you guys. Thank you. Have a good one. Cheerio.